Bob and Matt for their hard work and their dedication to the Lions organization over the past several years. They're both very fine men, and we wish them nothing but the best in the rest of their careers. Obviously, this season has not gone the way we expected. For the remainder of this season, Darrell Bevell will be our interim coach. I expect Darrell and our team to play hard and compete in our remaining 5 games for the balance of this season as we analyze our organizational structure and evaluate candidates for our general manager position. To our loyal fans, we know this has been a challenging year for everyone. Not having our fans around to support our team has been difficult for all of us. Football this season has looked and felt different, but it doesn't change the fact that we play for you. As I said in my opening press conference, I will do everything I can to put a winning team on the field for our fans in the city of Detroit. Unfortunately, we haven't won enough over the last 3 seasons, and our efforts to find the right leadership for the Lions begins today.
Okay, Mrs. Hamp, I wonder what, obviously you didn't like what was going on there. I wonder how much the last 5 days, the loss to Carolina, the loss to Houston, when you really had a chance to maybe at least mathematically stay in the playoff race, if that was the last straw, really.
Honestly, yes. 10 days ago, we looked like we had a good chance to be playoff bound. And, both of those games were extremely disappointing. And it just seemed like the path going forward wasn't what we wanted it to be. So, yes, we thought this was a good time to make the change.
And just the other part of it, that we go back to the statement last, I believe, December, when, expectations and meaningful games in December. Do you think you're sending a message that you kept your word by what you said then, that you're not going to tolerate what's happened in the last whatever period of time you want to make it?
Yes, hope so. I meant what I said last December, and I still mean it. So yes, things were not going well. It was not what we wanted. We were hoping to be playoff bound. I still guess we still have a slight mathematical chance, but things were just not seeming to go in the right way.
All right, thanks, Sheila.
2 things for you. Just first, in your mind, how do you see the power being structured going forward, I guess? Is this still going to be a GM, top-down organization, I guess, or could a head coach have the authority?
We're going to look at it all. We haven't made that decision yet. Some of it will probably have to do with the candidates we're looking at and how that would play out. But we're open. We have not set that structure.
And then part 2 of that, when you sort of outline what you're looking for in both a coach and a GM, I guess, to your search firm or whoever's helping you with the search, what are the attributes that are, most important to you in each position?
Well, again, that's not completely defined yet. All that, I promise you, we are going to do extremely thorough and comprehensive search for both positions. And yes, we have some ideas on what we're looking for, but again, not clearly defined. I have a feeling today you're going to have a lot more questions than I'm going to have answers to, but so I'll do the best I can, but.
Fair enough. We'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks then about it.
Absolutely.
Was there a moment for you where you realized this had to happen? Where not only just Matt, but Matt and Bob?
Well, it's hard. It was a hard decision just because, as I said, they're both terrific people. They've worked very hard and tirelessly for this organization. It clearly wasn't working. It wasn't what we had hoped for when we hired them, and so I don't know if there was an exact moment. It's something we've been thinking about for several weeks and going back and forth and deciding, but clearly the last couple of games had a lot to do with it.
Did you look at them as one package when it came down to this?
We looked at it from all angles.
Hi, how you doing? I have a question for you. I know you said that right now it's too early to talk about the coaching search, but will you be looking in the professional or the college ranks for the next head coach?
Again, we're going to be looking at everything.
Just curious, did this when you came into this coming season, obviously, you could look back on different things, but did you think about maybe making a move before this season? Or was there the one more pitch effort from Matt and Bob, or how did you guys come to the determination to give them one more year?
Well, as I said last year in December, last year was an unusual season also. We seem to be stacking up unusual seasons for different reasons. But, we had hoped that this year, the third year, things would gel and, the Matt's process and his coaching ability and everything would come together in a good way. And then it just became clear that it wasn't working.
And as you look to the next chapter here, is it important to have somebody come into place who understands the franchise's history and knowing that, just everything that comes along with the Detroit Lions and trying to turn it around in a way that they can't ignore the past, but almost embrace it and move forward?
We can't hide our past, that's for sure. But I think, I'm very dedicated to turning this ship around and really making a difference. And hopefully, we won't have to look back very much. We'll just look forward.
For the Detroit Lions, the easy part is now over after 3 tumultuous and disastrous seasons leading the Lions on the field. The franchise finally pulled the plug on embattled head coach Matt Patricia. The same can be said after 5 years of building an underwhelming and non-competitive roster, particularly on the defensive side of the football, for ousted general manager Bob Quinn. So now, with the dust settled, with those decisions behind them, the question is, what's next for a franchise who once again is forced to hit the reset button as they look to place themselves on a pathway to develop a consistent winning culture? And what does the change in regimes mean for veteran quarterback Matthew Stafford's tenure with the franchise? Friend of the program, Jeremy Reisman, the managing editor of Pride of Detroit, an online publication dedicated to covering everything relating to the Detroit Lions, joined me once again this week to provide his insight and perspective on what's next for the Honolulu Blue and Silver as Sheila Ford Hamp prepares to embark on the most important offseason during her young tenure as principal owner of the team. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. So, Jeremy, I want to welcome you back to the program, and I'm excited to talk some Detroit Lions football with you this evening. Great to see you, and always great to spend a few minutes with you as well.
I appreciate you having me, Kevin. It certainly is a little more exciting, I think, this time around. So happy to be here.
So, Jeremy, the easy part's over. Both Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia were given their walking papers over the weekend. So I'll ask you just to reflect on what you think about the firing, the timing of the firing, and where the Lions go from here.
Well, yeah, I think you nailed it. I think this was an easy decision for Sheila Ford Hamp. Not only were the Lions blown out in 4 out of 5 games, but they did it on a public stage, on Thanksgiving. It felt like the right time to do it. I mean, there were even cameras that caught her with her head in her hand. So it felt like this was just kind of something that she had to do. The timing was right. It also gave the Lions a couple extra days to adjust, doing it on a Saturday, letting Darrell Bevell have the weekend to get prepared before getting ready for Chicago this week. So I think the timing of it made complete sense. I think, again, easy decision for her. So, you can give her credit for doing it, or you can say maybe she should have done it earlier. But either way, I think you have to give her at least a little bit of credit for doing it, even if it did kind of feel like her hand was forced at this point.
Now, what do you say to the people that said this should have been done a year ago when the team could have or reset with a different direction, coming off the season they had last season?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely a lot of people who think that, and I understand it, and it makes a little bit of sense too, given that the team had, a third overall pick. That's something that obviously a new general manager would covet. If you were kind of wishy-washy on what you wanted to do, maybe it would make more sense to say, hey, let's give that third overall pick to a new general manager and see what they can do with it. But to me, I'm one that preaches patience with the coaching staff, even with the general manager. I think a lot of times, sometimes, it does take 3 years to implement your system, to get all the people that you want inside the building. And I think that was the case with Matt Patricia. I think he was still kind of tinkering, I should say, with the coaching staff. He finally had all of the the players that bought into his system in this year. So I support the decision, honestly, to give him one more shot and make absolute sure that he wasn't the guy. And he did that. He did exactly that. He got all of his players. He got all the people that he wanted to buy in. He got his coaching staff. There were no excuses for him this year. The injuries weren't even that bad this year. And sure, COVID threw kind of a wrench into it, but that's not an excuse that I think he can use at this point. So Sheila Ford-Hamp wanted to be sure, and now she's sure, and we'll move forward from there. I think you could go either way, but I'm not necessarily going to bury Sheila Ford-Hamp for making a decision. I probably would have made the same.
Well, Jeremy, last time I talked to you, I said that I was going to send out a search party to find the Lions defense, and they're still out looking. But that's another story for another day. But when we look at Darrell Bevell taking over, what do you think the Lions' main goal is for the last 5 games of the season, and what do you expect under interim head coach Bevell?
Well, I think, and Bevel said it this week, I think it's an audition for basically every player out there. It's an audition for him as a head coach, his first shot at being a head coach, to potentially either keep the job if the Lions decide to give him a shot, or maybe earn some head coaching interviews in the offseason. For the players, it's a way to prove that they want to be here next year. They want to be, for the guys that are heading to free agency, that they still have it. They can't really afford to take the final, 5 games off. And, some of them are even still talking playoffs, which is obviously kind of a far-fetched idea. But, mathematically speaking, if they were to somehow pull off 5 straight games, I would say maybe they do have a chance. But of course, if you're asking my opinion, I think they win 2 games at most in those final 5 games. But either way, I think it did sound like all of them kind of had a little bit of a pep in their step this week. I think we're going to see a little bit of differences, more so maybe on offense than on defense going forward. Bevel talked about maybe being a little more fast-paced, maybe even using some no huddle. We'll see. But overall, you can't change a ton at this point. You can't do a complete overhaul. I wouldn't expect just an unrecognizable team to come out there on Sunday against the Bears. And also this team is still now dealing with a bunch of injuries as well. So I don't expect a full scale change, but I do maybe for a week or two, you kind of see a little bit of an extra kick in their game and maybe a little bit better than what they looked like under Matt Patricia.
Well, we'll annoy Mitchell Trubisky for the Hall of Fame against the Lions this weekend. It'll be appointment viewing television, I'm sure, there, Jeremy. So,
Oh, yeah.
When we look at Bob Quinn and his tenure here, I'm still struck by the 9-7 comment isn't good enough. Do you think that was sort of his signature moment here in Detroit? And how do you think we'll remember his tenure as Lions GM?
Yeah, I think so. I think the exact quote of it was more like, where we were with Caldwell wasn't good enough. And I understand where he's coming from, and I don't necessarily disagree with him. I think, as much as, I respect Caldwell as a man and as a leader, the team had kind of plateaued. It did feel like they were never necessarily going to get over that mediocre hump. And sure, we'd take that today. We'd take a 9-7 team 7 days out of 7.
And they still have an outside chance of doing that.
That is true. They do still have that outside chance. But I don't necessarily fault him for wanting to, reach the elite in this league, become a franchise that doesn't only have, a random 11-5 season here or there. 11-5 is the expectation. 11-5 is the normal. And so he wanted to do that. I think really the main sticking point in his career will be hiring Matt Patricia. I think he got a little narrow in his view of how to build a team. And I think, if we're being completely honest, I think Matt Patricia was probably his guy from the minute he walked into the building. I think Jim Caldwell made it tough for him to fire him. And there are some rumors out there that the Ford family may have made it tough for him to fire Caldwell. But to me,
I'll take him back if you want. No.
Yeah, right. But yeah, I do think Bob Quinn's defining moment will be hiring Matt Patricia, because I do think his view of being a GM is a bit narrow. He admitted it himself. Once Matt Patricia was in town, he wasn't completely comfortable drafting for a guy like Jim Caldwell, because it's not something he's ever done, is draft for, a system that he's never been accustomed to. And that's kind of the danger of hiring a guy who's only been under one franchise his entire career, one viewpoint, one way to build a team. And I think that's where, we saw things fail in Detroit, is he just had that one narrow viewpoint. And when Matt Patricia came in here, it wasn't working. And 3 years in, they never got it to work.
Now, you don't think either Bob Quinn or Matt Patricia will be head coach and GM somewhere else, do you? I do think Matt Patricia will be a assistant somewhere if he wants to coach, but I have a hard time believing Bob Quinn will find a franchise that's willing to give him the keys to the car again.
Yeah, I think most likely, and I think there's already been some rumors that Matt Patricia could join the Patriots as early as this season and just kind of slide back right into a defensive role there in the coaching staff, and that certainly wouldn't surprise me at all. As for Bob Quinn, that one's a little tougher. He had some successes. I think Taylor Decker, his very first draft pick, was very good. You look around and there are some hits in those drafts. Kenny Golladay is obviously another big one. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him be in, maybe some sort of, personnel department somewhere. Maybe again, right back with the Patriots. We'll see. Obviously, that's where he's most comfortable. But there are a bunch of Patriot shoot-offs these days, so he could, land with a bunch of other teams that are going through some kind of Patriots type of personnel decisions. So it wouldn't completely surprise me to see them land somewhere, but they're probably going to take a at least a couple weeks off here.
Well, they're still both owed $10 million, so they don't have to work if they don't want to.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. When we look at Matt Patricia's tenure here, obviously the offense was serviceable with Stafford, but the defense was a disaster. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the defining moments of Matt Patricia's tenure here with the Lions as well.
Yeah, I mean, it has to stick with that defense, right? It never really got turned around. I think the only moment in which it felt like there was some hope was in the last half of that 2018 season, his first season, when right after they traded for Damon Harrison, we finally saw the run defense kind of rebound, and it felt like they might carry that momentum into 2019, and it did not carry over. No, there's no question about it. It didn't look any good, and it continued to look not any good. And I think this year was really the defining year for him. You get blown out in 4 out of 5 games. The defense. And in the one game that you do win out of that 5, you
should have lost.
Yeah, they give up a 21-point lead to Washington, one of the worst offenses in the league. And so the pass defense especially just never turned it around. The linebacking crew was always really bad. And you saw a lot of people regress. I mean, look at a guy like Tracy Walker, a guy that we expected to have a huge 2020 season. He starts the season on the bench, comes out and plays like he deserved to be on the bench, and basically unrecognizable. And you wonder, what did he do to these guys in the secondary? Why isn't Jeff Okudah looking any better? What's going on there? And so I think the defense is definitely going to be kind of the spokesperson, I guess, of what Matt Patricia's tenure was like. And like you said, the defense was just a disaster.
Now, don't laugh at this next question, but do you think the defense can get any better without Matt Patricia around?
I would love to think so, but with only 5 games left, and you got Desmond Trufant on IR, you got Jeff Okuda dealing with an injury, you got Trey Flowers still on IR. Now you have Danny Shelton on IR. I mean, even if Corey Unland were to turn things around, the defensive coordinator, do some things differently, I'm not sure he has the talent to really make a huge impact on Sundays in these last 5 games. So I wouldn't expect a huge turnaround at all this season now.
Now, what do you make of the way the Lions made the announcement, and what did you get out of Sheila Ford-Hamp's decision and the way she announced it?
Yeah, I mean, I actually wrote a column on this a little bit, and I don't actually like writing columns all that much because I like to kind of sit back and analyze rather than give my immediate opinions. But I have to say, I came out a little uninspired. It didn't sound like she had a pure vision of where she wanted this team to go. She really didn't provide any answers, if I'm being completely honest. And, it was just a couple hours after she decided to make the move, so I don't expect her to have all the answers. But one would have been nice. And she came out right at the beginning and said, I know you guys are going to have a lot of questions. I'm not going to have a lot of answers, and I can respect that. But, if it's an ideal situation, I'd like my owner to come out and have already been thinking about this, not just like, okay, I fired him, now I'm into it. I would have hoped Sheila was thinking about this weeks ago, because obviously, it wasn't a great start to the season. This team never really looked like they were going to get it on track. Every step of the way, there was something going wrong, even when the Lions were, near 500 early, or they were at 500 at one point in this in the season. So I don't know. I just, to me, it doesn't seem like these her and President Rod Wood are prepared at this point. And I'd like to see a little more preparation on their part, or at least some sort of a vision. Instead, I was just kind of left with, well, we're going to do everything we can. And that's a really basic line. It doesn't tell me anything about what you actually want in this coaching staff, how you're actually going to go about it, and all those sort of things. So I would have liked a little more detail, but I understand it's early in the process. She's only been on the job for 5 or 6 months, so I have to give her some leeway there, but I kind of wish they would have been a little bit further along, or at least would have shared how they're further along if they are.
Yeah, and they've also had plenty of practice on changing regime, so I'm sure they just dusted off the greatest hits there.
Exactly.
For that press conference. But one of the biggest decisions that the new general manager is going to have to make is the future of Matthew Stafford. And when he was asked about his future here, obviously he was non-committal and wanted to focus on the rest of this season. But obviously, that's a big decision for the future trajectory of the franchise. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on that decision, as well as we wait for it to be made.
Yeah, it's not going to be it's not going to be an easy decision. Both emotionally, financially, strategically, all those sort of factors are really tough to kind of navigate through, because obviously Matthew Stafford is the best quarterback this franchise has ever seen. Obviously he's getting up there in age. Obviously he's going to be a $19-20 million cap hit if you decide to move on. That's not going to be easy to navigate in a COVID strapped, cap strapped season. The cap is expected to go down. So, devoting that much cap space to a guy that's not even on your team, it would be tough. But at the same time, this might be the best route to go on. If the Lions don't win another game this season, they're probably looking at a top 5 pick. That's kind of an opportunity where you don't want to mess up and pass on a quarterback again like they did last year. And so, and it also might be the best opportunity to get the maximum amount of return on a Matthew Stafford trade. So it's a lot of questions to be answered. It's not a black and white situation at all. I think even as a personal fan of Matthew Stafford, I'm not sure what route I would take. If I had to guess, I think the cap hit is just a little bit too much to completely move on from. I think you got to maybe hold on to him for one more year. That doesn't necessarily mean you don't draft a rookie. Maybe you take kind of the Jordan Love route and sit him for a year behind Matthew Stafford. And then, unless Matthew Stafford just completely balls out in 2021, then you probably move on for him after that.
And in this way too early prediction, 24/7, instant gratification world we're living in, Jeremy, I'm going to ask you, what are some names you're going to keep your eye on for both vacant positions here in Detroit?
I'm still kind of early in the GM search. Those ones are a little tougher to me. I think really, the qualities I'm looking for in a general manager are basically someone who's had a lot of experience on the college scouting side of things. There's pro scouting and there's college scouting, and if you look at how teams succeed, ever since the rookie wage scale was implemented with the CBA a decade or so ago, it's been about building through the draft. It's really the only way you can have long-term success and that sort of thing. So basically, you look at the teams that do have those franchises that are always near the top. You look at the Steelers, you look at the Seahawks, you look at the Patriots. You probably don't want to look at the Patriots again, but Ravens, Packers, you look at all those guys and you look at their college scouting departments, and you comb through every single one of those guys and see who fits. And I don't have a personal preference at this point. Like I said, I'm still kind of looking through guys and doing my research, and I'll eventually probably have a list of 10 guys or so. But I think, you can throw the 49ers in there as well. I think they've been drafting extremely well as of late. So that's my thoughts on the GM side. If we're talking about head coaches, I'm going to stick with the 49ers, and I'm fully in the Robert Saleh group right now. I think he's a great story, obviously with the local ties to Michigan. I think what he's done with the defense, not only last year with a bunch of talent, but even more so this year with all the injuries that they're dealing with, and that still is a top 10 defense. Very, very appealing to me. He sounds like, in terms of character, he's exactly what you'd want. He's a player's type of coach that also has a fiery side. You see him jumping up and down on the sidelines. He's useful. He's got a bunch of connections there in San Francisco to a really good offensive mind in Kyle Shanahan. So if he can pluck some guys from Kyle Shanahan and bring them over as an offensive coordinator, I'd be really excited about that offense too. You might get a young up-and-comer guy on that offensive side of the ball, which I think is what a lot of people want for a head coach, right? Offense is where this league is headed, and they want to, there's a whole bunch of candidates out there that I think Lions fans are itching for on the offensive side of the ball. I think a guy like Robert Saleh can do both. I think he can bring the defense that he's learned either, through Seattle and into San Francisco, and also have those really good offensive ties with Kyle Shanahan's offense to bring some excitement to the offensive side of the ball too.
And what do you say to those people that say they tried a first-time head coach before in Matt Patricia, and maybe a veteran route is the way they go?
I mean, with any route, there's going to be counterexamples that didn't work. I mean, you can. I mean, the Lions tried. They tried Steve Mariucci, and he was a guy who had a Super Bowl, and that didn't work. I mean, you can find counterexamples everywhere. I personally like going. If you go with a guy who's been around before, well, he's also been fired before, and there's probably a reason for that. And so, retreads to me, I don't know. It doesn't have as much appeal to me, and I get part of it is just like, it's a mystery box when you get a young coordinator. You don't know if he's going to succeed. You don't know if he's going to fail. And obviously with Patricia, it didn't work out. But I'm kind of a guy where I'm willing to take that risk again. And you could also go the head coaching route in college, and that comes with plenty of risk. We've seen guys who are really able to recruit and get young guys all motivated, but you come to the pros where some guys are maybe your age or in their late 30s, and it doesn't work as well. So I think with any route you take, you're going to find some examples that don't work. You're going to have some risk on every side. But to me, I tend to flow towards those young coordinators that are up and coming. And let's not act like Saleh, is inexperienced. He's been coaching for almost 20 years. So I think he's experienced enough where I'd have confidence in him. And, when you come with a full recommendation from a guy like Richard Sherman, that really, kind of draws my attention and really makes me believe he can succeed as a head coach.
And my final question for you is, do you think this Lions job is attractive compared to the other jobs that are out there? What do you think is the national perception of this job?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I don't have a great answer because I think it'll depend on what the GM and the coaches are looking for. If I'm looking at it from a general manager point of view, and I'd like some job security and thinking, this could be turned around really quick and I could see some early success, I'm probably not looking at the Lions job. I think this is maybe a 2-3 year project before you're even talking playoffs. And, that can scare some people away for sure. I mean, this is a win or die kind of league. And so, I mean, we just saw it with Matt Patricia, didn't even get 3 full years and he's gone. And so you look at the Lions roster right now and it does look like it's far away, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I could see why that would scare away some general managers. The one thing I will say is I think it is appealing in the sense that ownership is going to be hands off. They're going to let you do whatever the heck you want. And I think a lot of people are going to want that kind of autonomy when they're a general manager. They're going to be able to have their hands all over the franchise, from, what the practice field looks like to what the locker room looks like to, all those sort of kind of minutia decisions that general managers probably want to make. And so in that sense, I think it's appealing. In terms of head coach, you have to look at the history of this franchise, right? You have to keep that in the back of your mind if you're a head coach. Head coaches don't seem to last very long in Detroit, and so that can be a scary idea. But at the same time, there are only so many vacancies, so many opportunities a person can have as, a head coach. There are definitely more candidates than there are positions to fill every single year. So I think while I wouldn't consider either from a general manager or a coaching standpoint, the Lions to be, an above average landing spot, an above average destination. It is an opportunity. And I think, obviously if it comes down to Detroit and, a more illustrious franchise, they might go with a more illustrious franchise, but the Lions are going to get the Lions are going to have I won't say they'll get a talented guy, but they'll have the opportunity to have a talented guy because there is so much talent out there and a limited amount of spaces.
Hey, Jeremy, it's always great to see you. And this is was supposed to be an Olympic year, so it means the Lions are going through another head coaching search. All kidding aside, always great to see you, and thanks for a few minutes talking Lions. Really appreciate it, and great to see you once again, buddy.
Good to see you too, Kevin.